Today I'm going to be reading chapter 3 and 4 of the Beast Quest book, Ferno the Fire Dragon by Adam Blade. Chapter 3, Whispers of Beasts. It was still dark when Tom began his journey, and as the sun rose, he saw that Arenell wasn't the only place in trouble. He passed fields and meadows that lay black and dead. Dry ditches traced paths where streams had once flowed. On and on Tom walked, ignoring his tired muscles and aching feet. He was determined to get to the city and talk to the king. As he got closer to the high city walls, other people joined him on the dusty road. Men cantered by on horseback. Family walked beside donkeys weighed down with packs. He could hear them muttering to one another. One farmer was selling sheep at the market. Another hoped to get a good price for his oats and barley. But many of the weary travelers seemed to be fleeing famine and danger, and just like Tom, were heading to the palace to ask for help. Tom started to walk faster. The city gates were open. As Tom passed through them, he felt a new surge of energy. He was here at last. He pushed his way through the narrow, crooked streets. There were tall wooden houses on each side of him, and traders were standing by stalls, calling out to people to come and buy their wares. The air was muggy, the smell of cooking mingling with the market animals, and the people jostling through the crowded streets. Chickens squawked in cages, goats bleated loudly, and mangy dogs sniffed around the stalls for scraps of food. Tom quickly jumped aside as someone trotted by on a horse. It was so different from his village, where everyone knew one another and stopped to say hello. Here, no one even looked at him. Tom didn't care, though. He had one aim, and that was to get to the palace. He could see it, towering over all the other buildings at the center of the city. The sun shone on its soaring purple spires and domes of sea-green glass. But as he reached the palace courtyard, Tom found that his way was blocked by a crowd of people. There was a long line, and it was moving very slowly toward the king's clerk, a tubby little man sitting behind a large table, scratching on a paper with an inky stalk of a feather. So this is the king's clerk. He was talking to a ragged old man who seemed close to exhaustion. "Now then," said the clerk primly, "where are you from?" "We're doomed," gasped the ragged man, "if the king will not help." "Sorry, I'm a little deaf," the clerk apologized. "What did you say?" The ragged man groaned. "I said we're doomed." "Ah, you're from the village of Weirdoom," said the clerk, carefully writing this down. "Where's that?" No, said the ragged man impatiently. "I mean we're all doomed." "The village of We're All Doomed," the clerk corrected himself, crossing out his first entry. "Oh, this is hopeless," Tom said. "At this rate, I'll be here till next Tuesday." "I don't think we have that much time," said a stout man with a beard down to his knees. "In the West, we've been hit by tidal waves. We need help to build sea barriers." "There are terrible blizzards in the north," said an old woman. "The whole kingdom is in danger, and mark my words, the beasts have done this." "The beasts?" scoffed the stout man. "You must be joking." "Joking, am I?" The old woman glared at him. Her skin was lined and pale like parchment, but her eyes were a fierce blue. "It's them, I tell you." Tom frowned. Like every other child in the kingdom, he had heard tales of the beasts. They were strange creatures, dragons and sea serpents, said to dwell in the darkest corners of Avantia, though no one had ever seen them. "The beasts are only make-believe," Tom protested, "stories to scare little kids." The old woman looked at him. "If no one believes in the beasts, how will they ever be stopped?" "Well, I never heard any tales of them causing droughts or floods," Tom insisted, turning away from her. "Something has happened," she said, "something to turn them against us and destroy our land. Yes, something evil has disturbed the beast this time." "What?" Tom spun back around, but the old woman was gone. "Did you see her?" Tom stared at his neighbors, baffled. "Where did she go?" "Who cares?" said the stout man. "It's one less person in line." Tom fell silent. He found himself thinking of the strange shadow he had glimpsed in Gretlin's field. Could it have been cast by a beast? He suddenly realized that fires as big as the one in Gretlin's wheat field did not happen naturally. Something had started that fire, something huge. Suddenly, Tom felt another shadow fall over him. He looked up but found only storm clouds blowing in swiftly over the city. Anything might be lurking above the clouds, anything at all. Chapter 4, The Court of the King. Tom made up his mind. Waiting was getting him nowhere. If he even made it to the front of the line, his complaint would be one of hundreds. He'd come to ask the king for help, and that was exactly what he was going to do, even if it meant sneaking into the palace. He struggled through the crowds and out of the courtyard. The pale light of the moon shone down on Tom. He started to circle the palace. "What I need is an open window," he muttered under his breath, "or an unlocked door." Guards were posted all the way around the palace walls. By the time Tom reached the eastern gateway, manned by 2 guards, he didn't feel so sure of himself. Perhaps lots of people have tried to see the king, he thought, moving farther into the shadows. Maybe they've been locked up in the dungeons. Suddenly, there was a sound of running footsteps. A young, ragged lad stumbled out of the night toward the palace. "Open the gates," the boy shouted hoarsely. He was around Tom's age, caked in dirt. He clutched a piece of armor in one hand and a parchment scroll in the other. "I bring word from Sir Caldor. I must see the king." To Tom's surprise, the guards opened the gates and then rushed to help the boy, leaving the gates wide open. This is it, Tom thought. He sprinted over and ducked inside behind the guards' backs. "Not so fast, boy," said a voice behind him. Heart pounding, Tom looked back. Our guard was moving toward him, crossbow aimed. Tom had to think quickly. He was dirty, tired, and hungry from days of travel. He didn't look like he belonged in the palace at all, but he had to take a chance. "Kitchen delivery," Tom said quietly, pointing at his rucksack. The guard's eyes narrowed. "Aren't you a little late?" he asked, clearly suspicious. Tom had a feeling this was a test. "Am I? Then I'd better hurry," he said, taking a few steps forward. The guard looked uncertain but lowered his weapon and let him pass, giving Tom a final piercing stare. This boy did seem somehow familiar. "Yeah, you'd better. And don't even think about sneaking through the front gate again. I don't care how much longer it takes to go around," the guard shouted at the boy's back. Tom walked forward confidently. He didn't dare look back until the guard was out of sight. Another close call, he thought to himself. Now I need to find the king. Sticking to the shadows and staying close to the walls, Tom cautiously explored the palace. A delicious smell of roasting meat and vegetables came wafting toward him through a door that was slightly ajar. His stomach growled. It seemed like ages since his meal of bread and cheese the day before. "The palace kitchens must be in there," he said to himself. "My excuse already worked once. Maybe if I go in, I'll find a way of getting to King Hugo." "Act like you own the place," he muttered, marching up to the door. "Then no one will question what you're doing here." Excitement and fear beat through him. Would he get away with it? All he knew was that the future of his village depended on it. As soon as Tom walked in, he was struck by a heat so fierce it reminded him of the forge at home. Huge iron cauldrons hung over open fires. Red-cheeked maids milled about, stirring the steaming stews and laying out food on silver platters. A huge doughy woman bustled up to him, blonde curls escaping from her lacy cap. "Ah," she cried, "you must be the new kitchen boy the chamberlain sent." "What? Oh, yes, that's right," Tom agreed quickly. "I'm cook," the woman continued. "Thank goodness you're here. 2 serving girls are off sick, and the king's supper is almost ready to be served." "The king's supper?" Tom gulped. "You want me to serve food to the king?" "You? Don't be daft. The head usher tends to him." Cook gave a hearty laugh. "But the king is dining with his lords and ladies of the inner council tonight. You shall help to serve them what little food we have left." She wiped her nose on the back of her hand, then threw a handful of herbs into a cauldron. Tom couldn't believe the food shortages were affecting the palace. The troubles were even worse than he had imagined. In a daze, Tom followed Cook over to where platters of food waited, ready for serving. A steward gave Tom a quick lesson in balancing the platter with his hand held high above his head. Then he turned on his heel. Tom followed him and the other servants up to the beaten bronze doors of the royal dining chamber. The head usher led the way inside, and Tom's heart beat faster. There was King Hugo himself, seated at a long table lit by tall candles. He was surrounded by grim-faced lords and ladies. Tom felt his breath catch in his throat. He had somehow managed to trick his way into the very heart of the palace. This was surely his chance to talk to the king. But looking at the majestic figure at the head of the table, Tom suddenly felt nervous. What should he say? Should he bow? What if King Hugo had him thrown into the dungeon? "Remember everyone at home," he told himself. "You can't go back out now." Squaring his shoulders, he carried his platter to the far end of the table. A short, elderly man with a wispy white beard sat there. He was dressed in a gown of faded red silk, a pointed hat perched upon his head. The old man's gray eyes seemed to glow in the candlelight, as bright as the jewel he wore on a chain around his neck. "I thought only wizards dressed like this," Tom thought to himself. "Well, a blacksmith would look pretty stupid in these clothes, wouldn't he?" said the old man with a smile. Tom gasped. "You read my mind." "That's because I am a wizard," the old man murmured, watching him closely. "But what are you, I wonder?" Tom didn't have a chance to reply. The dining room doors flew open. The ragged young boy with a piece of armor and parchment scrambled inside. 2 guards followed closely behind him. "Forgive me, sire," the boy croaked. "I am Robin, squire of Caldor the Brave. I come to you at his command." The king rose to his feet. "Greetings, Robin," he said, "but where is Sir Caldor?" Robin's eyes brimmed with tears as he held up the piece of armor, a scorched breastplate. "He's been burned to death by a dragon. Our quest is over." King Hugo groaned. "My bravest knight has perished," he cried in despair. "Our kingdom is surely doomed." So that's the end of chapter 4, and I'll come back in another installment for chapters 5 and 6.